Good morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock, August 1st, and we will wait a few minutes. There we go. Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock, August 1st, and we're going to get started with the 2026 Ute 100 and 50-mile course preview and pre-race meeting here in. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes. We'll give everyone a few minutes before we get started with the details. Good morning, Elliot. It's good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, we'll get started here shortly. We got Juliana from Missouri, but in reality, just down the street. Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for joining me for this pre-race meeting. And like I said, we'll get started here in about a minute. Give everyone a second to log on. Good morning, Robert. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. This makes my life a lot easier when I know that people are prepared, that they're not filled with anxiety and uncertainty about the event, and they familiarize themselves with, the details that will keep everyone safe, on course, and to the finish line. So, my name is Jordan Ricks. I am the race director for the Ute 100. And to begin this morning, we will start with a quick course preview. So we'll begin packet pickup at 4 a.m. I'll go over some of those details here in a moment. Race will begin at 5 a.m. for 50-mile and 100-mile runners. Keep in mind that the sun does not rise until like 6:30 in the morning. I would imagine you would be able to run without a headlamp for, from 6 to 6:30, but you're going to need a headlamp for the first hour. So, course begins on a paved road. It'll climb for about a mile and a half before you take a sharp right off of LaSalle Loop Road onto the Jimmy Keene single track. You'll stay on that single track for a short period of time before connecting to the Kokopelli. Stay on the Kokopelli for a number of miles, which will then connect to Sand Flats. These are all, with the exception of the first mile and a half, predominantly downhill miles, net downhill miles. Certainly there's going to be a couple of rollers in there, but predominantly net downhill miles. You'll get to the Upper Porcupine aid station at approximately 6.5 miles. Again, net downhill. And then from there you continue down Sand Flats for a number of miles before you take a sharp right on the Lower Porcupine single track road. It's one of the most exceptional trails. Lower Porcupine and Upper Porcupine, some of the most exceptional trails you'll find anywhere. You're going to be running along a rim, as the sun is rising. So yeah, once you take a sharp right off of Sand Flats onto Lower Porcupine, it's going to be a gradual climb from there. There are a couple of aid stations which you're going to have to kind of go out of your way to get to. So the first, Upper Porcupine, is right along the road, easily accessible. The second time you go through Upper Porcupine, you're going to have to kind of take a right and then into the aid station and then back out to the single track. We have to do this both for Upper Porcupine and the second time that we pass through Hazardous. If we miss those out and backs into the aid station and back to course, we won't get the mileage that we need to complete the distances. So once you pass through Upper Porcupine a second time, it is a gradual climb to Hazardous. Nothing too challenging, nothing too treacherous along that section of the course, but it is a climb up to Hazardous. Once you get to Hazardous, you'll make your way through the Warner Campground, and then the climb to Man's Peak will begin. And that is a challenging climb. Much of those miles in that direction are above tree line. I'm guessing, just kind of off the top of my head, there's about 4 miles above tree line, of which most of it, if not all of it, is scree. So it could be kind of treacherous up on Man's Peak. I'll go over the lightning route in a little bit. So once we ascend and descend Man's Peak down into Geyser Aid Station, this is where the 50 mile and the 100 mile will divert from one another. 50 mile will take Moonlight Meadows, and 100 mile will begin their descent along Dark Canyon Road. So Dark Canyon Road is a National Forest road, very quiet on the backside of the La Salle Mountains. This is the way that crew is going to want to access the Dark Canyon and South Mountain Aid Station. Runners are also along the road during this time, so please make sure, if your crew driving along the road, that you're being incredibly respectful of the runners, and do the best you can to avoid dusting them out. So then a sharp right off of Dark Canyon Road to begin your climb up to South Mountain. About a mile and a half from South Mountain, you'll take another sharp right, and hop on the single track before you enter into the South Mountain Aid Station. From there, you do a loop and return to the South Mountain Aid Station. This section of course is not heavily trafficked, and so it's relatively overgrown and has the potential to be difficult to follow. I'll go over some of those details here in a moment. But once you make that loop back into the South Mountain Aid Station for the second time, you'll begin a descent before you begin to climb back to Geyser Pass Aid Station, of which the water-only aid station is along that route as well. So once 100-mile runners get into the Geyser Pass Aid Station, they'll continue to follow the 50-mile route, or the 50-mile route down Moonlight Meadows into Uwa Campground, and then into Hazardous. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to go into the Hazardous Aid Station before you begin your climb up Gold Knob. So all runners are gonna ascend Gold Knob on their last 10 miles. For 50K, that course is a little bit different. I'm not going to go over that today because of the limited number of runners that we have. I'll go over that on the morning of the event. But all runners will ascend Gold Knob in their last 10 miles of their race. So once you ascend Gold Knob, it's a descent down to a little valley before you begin to climb shortly, and then descend Miners Basin all the way to the finish. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the course and have not spent any miles out on the course at all, it's a very rocky course. It's very technical. There's a lot of climbing, a lot of elevation gain and loss, and certainly one of the more challenging 100-mile, 50-mile, and 50K races that exist out there. I would even argue that the 50K race is one of the most challenging 50Ks in the country. So as I mentioned, the lightning route, once you get to the hazardous aid station, there's always the potential that lightning will be present on Man's Peak. So we've designated a lightning route that will avoid the sections above tree line and the potential for those kind of issues. So as you begin to ascend Man's Peak, we will put up a sign that says alternative lightning route, Burrow Pass. If there is any presence of lightning or the possibility of lightning, if storms are beginning to form above Man's Peak, we want runners to be really, really cautious about this. That section, of course, as I mentioned, is difficult to both navigate, and the technical terrain slows everyone down significantly. So my mother will be at the hazardous aid station. She's been helping me with this event as well as all my events since the beginning. So she will be there working in coordination with the National Forest to make those determinations, to make those recommendations. If lightning is present when you come through that aid station, she will make that determination. But if lightning is only kind of forming, if those storms and those clouds are forming, those decisions will need to be made by the runners as they get to that point. There have been a couple of years in the past in which runners have begun that ascent towards Man's Peak, and those storms formed quickly, and they made the responsible choice of turning around and returning to the Burrow Pass alternate lightning route. So please be really cautious about that. Be real responsible about that, please. So a couple of sections along the course that have the potential to be challenging. And this is information that I'll go over again on the morning of the event, because once I get out there and mark the course beginning on Monday, I'll have more details about reroutes and any changes to the course. I don't expect any changes. I don't expect any reroutes. I did update the GPX files so that I believe them to be 100% accurate or close to 100% accurate. So please download those GPX files to either a phone or your watch and utilize those throughout the race. Of course, my recommendation is that you follow the course markings first. Myself and my good friend Mike Hartley will be out there. We're leaving tomorrow to begin course marking on Monday. Him and I will mark all of the course with the exception of a 10-mile section that will be marked by good friends, Zach and Lizzie, who are Moab locals who have run the course countless times. So the course markings will be exceptional. But one of the things that always presents an issue is the presence of cows. So there are cows throughout the La Salle Mountains. I'm not sure where they're located this year. I will know more details as I begin marking course, but cows will, they will eat the course markers. They will meet, so just quickly, this is what I put up as course markers. So every 0.1, 0.15, we'll put up this reflective rope with the standard blue marking. That will go up every 150 to 200 meters along the Dark Canyon Road as well as Sand Flats. I'll probably put them up a little less frequent just because we have a limited number of course markings. I'm certain I'll still put up about 1,100 of those clothespins, but along the roads, maybe not quite as frequent. Along the single track, every 150 to 250 meters. Every time the course diverts or there's social trails, I will put up 3 to 5 of these directing runners along the course, and then as well any diversion from the course, I'll put up a wrong way sign. So the course is marked exceptionally well. The sections that runners will be traveling through the night will be marked even better. But course markers should be easy to follow. GPX file is accurate, but the sections to just kind of be aware of. Miners Basin in the past has had cows. That section you do drop down. If you reference the map, you do drop down into the valley before you before you make a loop, and you're only separated by about 100 meters, that loop and that connecting trail. So you're going to want to make sure that you are just paying attention in that last 10 miles approximately of the race, 8 miles or so. South Mountain, as I mentioned, is always overgrown. They don't see a lot of traffic out there. We will mark that more heavily than we did last year, so it shouldn't be an issue. The GPX file was not accurate in that section as well last year with a course reroute. So I went and updated that, and that should be accurate. Again, you're going to have to check in at both Upper Porcupine and Hazardous as you pass through it the second time. Make sure that you do that. There's always the potential that runners will receive, aid at some uncrewable location and then just bypass the hazardous aid station. You have to go into that hazardous aid station. That's approximately 1.5 miles of course that you do not want to miss. So moving on, packet pickup. The website says we will begin packet pickup at 4 p.m. on Friday at the start finish location. We will begin setting up that start finish line and will be present at that location probably beginning at around noon, noon to 1. So if you're in the area, if you're camping, you can swing by. If we're present, we will certainly handle packet pickup. But we'll officially begin that at 4, and we'll be there until about 7 or 8 o'clock at night handing out those packets. We'll begin packet pickup again Saturday morning at 4 a.m. We don't have, a ton of runners. It's going to be easy to process everyone. The start finish line is easily located. It was built a number of years ago by the county and the National Forest as a large utility lot when they were upgrading LaSalle Loop Road. It can park 500, 600, 700 vehicles. So, you're welcome to camp there. You're welcome to camp there the night before. We could accommodate any kind of vehicle, any size of vehicle, campers, RVs, tent camping. There's plenty of camping for everyone, and it's a relatively flat area, so it's a nice spot to camp. If you have additional questions about where to camp, if you would like to avoid the start finish line, there's a number of other locations in the LaSalle Mountains to camp. Send me a message. I have like an infographic that I can send you that provides those details. So anyway, gear recommendations. People always ask like, hey, what are the gear expectations? I don't really like to give. I like to give recommendations, but I don't like to give expectations or mandatory gear. I just don't think that the race warrants mandatory gear. What I would say is that we expect all weather conditions. I would guess or approximate that the weather on the morning of the race would be in the 50s. As you pass through Upper Porcupine, both the first and the second time, of course, the day will be warming. It was beginning to warm on that second pass through Upper Porcupine last year. Fortunately, that's the only real hot section of the course, so we'll begin to climb immediately after we pass through that Upper Porcupine 2 aid station. So once you get to hazardous aid station, it's all treed unless you're above tree line. In the past, last year we had much better weather than we had in the past, so the climb up Mans Peak was not like the previous year. Just to kind of give you an idea of what Mans Peak is like, the previous year, 2024, we had people lose hats, jackets, someone's contact blew out of their eye on the Mans Peak section of the course. So it could be rainy, it could have lightning present, hail, It can be cold, people could be wet. So the lower sections, as I mentioned, they're going to be warmer, but as you climb out of hazardous, the rest of the course is going to be, what you would expect of high mountain country. So whether that's like the Uintas in Utah or Rocky Mountains here in Colorado, expect everything from 50 to 70s during the day, and as we should expect, the nights are going to get cold. So I would certainly have a rain jacket leaving hazardous, and would recommend a rain jacket when you leave hazardous the second time as you climb Gold Knob. Gold Knob doesn't really present a significant lightning issue, and we've never had real significant weather on Gold Knob. It's predominantly Man's Peak. So I would expect trail running shoes, rugged trail running shoes, a rain jacket. Um, I've seen many people complete the 100-mile distance without even a pack. I wouldn't recommend that. I would highly recommend that you bring your running vest. Um, People always ask the question, should I use poles? I think poles are highly recommended. There is cell phone service. We're not going to be tracking runners, but there's cell phone service throughout the event. Certainly, there's mileage when you're going to lose cell phone service, but you don't go a significant number of miles without cell phone service. Your shoes should not get wet. We've not had a whole lot of precipitation or rain in the high country in both Utah and Colorado, both during the winter as well as the spring and summer. So your feet should not get wet at any point during the event. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, if you're new to ultra running, send me a message. I'd happily have a conversation about more of the details and kind of what to expect with an ultra running event. But otherwise, from just looking at the ultra sign up results, most of us are experienced ultra runners, know what to expect, and can prepare accordingly. Drop bags. We'll take drop bags to all those locations listed on the website. Please refer to that. The size and what you include in that drop bags is determined by you. We'll take whatever you need us to take out to those aid stations. One of the challenges that we have with this event is getting those drop bags back to the finish line. So if you're running at the front of the pack, those drop bags are difficult to get back before those aid station closes. This is a difficult race for me to find volunteers, so I don't have people who can shuttle drop bags or runners or crew to and from aid stations and to and from the start finish line. So one way to make this more convenient for myself as well as you all is to have a section of drop bags that are unused and a section of drop bags that have been used and no longer needed. So keep in mind you're going to go through hazardous twice. Please don't put your hazardous drop bag in the used section, the tarp that we have out there, because we'll potentially bring it back to the start finish line and you won't have it as you pass through the second time. But we will have a tarp for unused and a tarp for used drop bags. Please place your drop bag in that used section, and as we have crew and volunteers coming and going, we'll try to get those drop bags back to the start finish line in a convenient way. Also, with the way that this course is organized, the way that this event is organized, it is very much an old school ultra running event in which we rely upon runners to be educated, to know what they're doing, crew to be informed, to know where they're going, but also the reliance on crew and pacers to help at aid stations, to help get runners who DNF off the course. They've always been incredible help in the past, so we're just asking again this year that if your crew check in with the volunteers at the aid stations, ask if there's anything that you can help them with. and it makes everyone's weekend in the mountains much easier. Um, a used and an unused tarp for drop bags to make that more convenient to get those back to the start finish line. Um, Crew and pacers. Um, with limited access to some of these aid stations, the 50 mile can pick up a pacer at mile 15 at Upper Porcupine. And for the 100-mile runners, you could pick up a pacer at the Dark Canyon aid station. We will have, we won't have bibs for pacers. It's just not needed in this type of an event. But we will have pacers sign waivers. So those waivers will be at both the start finish line and at all aid stations that allow pacers. So if you're a pacer, please just make sure that you sign that waiver so that everyone is covered. And as I mentioned on the website, we're really relaxed about pacers. This event is not, it's we organize it on your behalf for you. We want to make sure that you enjoy your time. We want to make sure that you share the moment with family and friends. So we're very flexible about pacers. So just keep that in mind. 50-mile pacers can be dropped off at Geyser. But please refer to the website. You have to park a distance from the aid station. We cannot have anyone parking at both Hazardous and Geyser aid station. Those are popular locations to drop off mountain bikers to ride the whole enchilada. So we need to respect the demands of the National Forest if we want to continue to organize this event. We have to be very rigid, very strict about those two locations. There cannot be people parking in those parking lots that are used by the mountain bikers and the shuttling companies. If crew is parked in those locations, the aid station captains have been warned to ask you to politely move, but we will be rigid about those who refuse to follow that rule. The only way that we're going to be able to continue to do this is if we do not park people at Hazardous and we do not park people at Geyser. Now, for those who want a pacer at Geyser, because you can pick up a pacer at 15 and not again until 35. So if you absolutely want to have a pacer, your crew needs to basically drop you off and go. There are some parking spots, some dispersed camping parking spots about half a mile or from the Geyser Pass aid station. You're welcome to park there, and the Pacers welcome to walk from there, but we can't have anyone parked in those official parking lots, both at Hazardous and Geyser. And I certainly can answer any of those questions in person for crew on the morning of. If you have any confusion about 50-mile drop-off for Pacers at the Geyser Pass aid station, just send me a message and I'll clarify that for you. There are a number of locations where you can spectate. We're not going to limit and certainly are not interested in limiting where people can spectate. So Dark Canyon Road, you're going to be on Dark Canyon Road with the runners for a number of miles. Certainly a great place to just park and spectate. Uwa Campground in between the Geyser aid station and Hazardous, very easily accessible. You can spectate there at mile 20 approximately. 50-mile and 100-mile runners are going to be crossing LaSalle Loop Road. Just 100 meters from where they cross, there is the LaSalle Overlook. Great place to see runners at approximately mile 20. Great place for the sunrise. It overlooks Castle Valley. Lots of parking. You can spectate there. But anywhere along the course, as long as you're not parked in those two locations, you're welcome to spectate wherever you like. Certainly, we don't want you crewing runners outside of crew accessible aid stations, but you're welcome to, lift the spirits of your runner by cheering them on at those locations. So aid stations, the crew accessible aid stations, for whatever reason, the website that I use doesn't allow me to embed a Google map in there. So the best solution that I found was to provide pinned locations of the crew accessible aid stations. All you need to do is copy those coordinates and paste those into whatever mapping software you use, and those will direct you to those aid stations. Um, every single year, without exception, crew takes the wrong route to the Upper Porcupine aid station. I will put out a bifold that says turn right coming from one direction, turn left coming from another direction, that directs runners onto Sand Flats Road to get to that Upper Porcupine aid station. Generally, what people do is they take those coordinates, they plug them into their Google map, and it takes them down some of the gnarliest four-wheel drive roads. And for the last 2 consecutive years, fortunately, there have been crew out there with heavy-duty trucks and ropes and have been able to tow people out of those spots. So anyway, when you're going to Upper Porcupine, I'll put out a sign. You're going to take Sand Flats. You're not always just going to simply follow, the recommendations given by Google Maps. So I'll put that sign up to direct you to Upper Porcupine, which is where we always have all the problems. Everything else is relatively simple and easy to navigate with those coordinates. Only Upper Porcupine can be difficult. So don't get stuck. Don't be that person. Let's have a year without someone getting stuck and someone having to get pulled out of their bogged down mud location. So we have along the 100-mile course, we have full service aid stations and water only aid stations. Those water only aid stations will have water as well as an electrolyte drink. That's the only thing that those two will have. Everything else will be a full service aid station that will include water, Tailwind, Never Second, applesauce, soda, candy, chips, fruit, pickles, sandwiches, tortilla wraps, ramen, broth, soups, pierogies, potatoes, quesadillas, hot drinks, etc. So we'll have everything that you would need at those full service aid stations. Those water only aid stations will be water and electrolyte drink only. So as I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to get people off of the course. So if you DNF at any location, it's going to be difficult to get you back to the start finish line. That's why we ask that crew, spectators, pacers, that you help runners and other crew and pacers out in any way that you possibly can. But keep in mind, if you DNF anywhere along the course, it is challenging to get you off and back to the start finish line. So keep that in mind. 100-mile runners, if for whatever reason you get to the Geyser Pass aid station the first time and you're just not having a great day, that's a great location to make a decision about whether you're going to be able to complete the 100-miler or you should follow the 50-mile course. So keep that in mind. And yes, we'll have veggie broth. We'll have hummus at a number of locations, thanks to Juliana. So we will have a variety of vegan, vegetarian options at every aid station. I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover at this time. So now's a great time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. If not, I will cover some of this information again Saturday morning and provide you the more specific details in regards to the course. So if you have questions, please post them and I'll answer those. Otherwise, I will download this and share it to our YouTube page for those who want to refresh it or review it. So yeah, we'll do drop bags. We'll start collecting drop bags on Friday. So you're welcome to drop them with us Friday. We'll have just a number of tarps labeled with those aid stations. So we'll begin collecting those on Friday as you pick up your packets. And then, of course, we'll collect those Saturday morning and send those out with the aid stations who are going to be working at those specific aid stations. So, okay. So yeah, drop bags Friday and Saturday during packet pickup. Let's see here. Sorry if I missed it. The question is, not exactly sure what the question is, but there are there is a map at the bottom of the website with pinned locations for crew accessible aid stations. That is not a Google map, it's some other form of a map. If you click on those pinned drops, it provides coordinates. You can just copy and paste those into Google Maps, and that will direct you to those aid stations for crew. So yeah, packet pickup will be. It says on the website we'll begin packet pickup on Friday at 4 p.m. But we will be there most of the day Friday, setting up, welcoming runners, family, and friends. So you can drop by, probably as early as noon. But yeah, we'll be there early afternoon to begin that packet pickup. So you're welcome to stop by then. Yeah, it's 99 miles. That's what runners were getting last year. I know the GPX says 97. I did not have anyone come in 97 last year. Everyone was close to, everyone was at that 99 or 100 plus last year. Yeah, the crew at aid stations are easily accessible. Those are large parking lots. So their vehicle and all of your gear is in a short walk. They won't have to haul things in or need a trolley or anything. So, to have PBRs at aid stations. Yeah. Who knows what you'll see at Hazardous at that last aid station. Wish we could have more, but National Forest is always very attentive at this race. I direct a lot of other races in the National Forest, and they by far the most attentive. So that kind of answers that question. Portable toilets. So the question is, will some aid stations have portable toilets? I do not purchase any toilets on course. Of course, there will be toilets at the start finish line, and plenty of them. But all throughout the course, there are National Forest vaulted toilets. So I have a list with the mileage, but it's like every 6 miles or so there is a vaulted toilet. You may end up going 8 or 9 miles at some point, but I think approximately on average there's a toilet every 6 miles. And then in the LaSalle Mountains and in the Moab area, my permit requires that I have WAG bags. So if there are runners who need to use the toilets, we'll have WAG bags at aid stations to avoid, your standard number 2 in the mountains. But yeah, vaulted toilets all along the course. Yeah, the question is it going to get cold enough for like a puff jacket at night? I would say if you're the type of runner that runs cold, it gets pretty cold at night. I'd expect in the higher elevation, depending on where you're at along the route, it certainly could get in the 40s. So the question is gels and other products. So I have Never Second gels at every aid station, Tailwind at all aid stations but South Mountain. The South Mountain aid station, we will have the Never Second electrolyte mix there. So Never Second gels at every aid station, Tailwind at all aid stations but South Mountain. South Mountain will have never second electrolyte. And then at a couple of aid stations, I threw some of those watermelon precision gummies at a couple of the aid stations. So enough gels to get everyone through. Certainly, I think approximately there's enough for everyone to take, 2 gels every time they go through an aid station. So, keep that in mind. Please don't take 8 every time you go through an aid station. We certainly don't have enough for everyone to take 8, but enough to cover everyone throughout the event. Um, the question is, would it be fair to say that you only need 2 drop bags? Um, it's based on the individual. I've been running for, since I was a little kid. My dad was an ultra runner. I like to run with minimal gear. I ran this race in 2018, slightly different course, but I carried a waist belt for some of it, and then a vest for the other parts. I never use drop bags. I've run a number of 100-mile races, and I've never used a drop bag. I just get what is at the aid station, and then have crew at the crew accessible aid station. So, you know, refer to the drop bag chart, and wherever you need a drop bag, if you need us to take one large one or multiple small ones, we're happy to accommodate any size um, a drop bag. So let's next question. The question is, do all main aid stations have hot, real food beyond just snacks? The answer is absolutely. Like I mentioned, we'll have, we bought a number of soups from Costco. We'll have, ramen and tons of hot foods available at all aid stations, with the exception of Upper Porcupine. We're not going to have cooked foods at Upper Porcupine. We'll have sandwiches and tortilla wraps and everything else that you would expect, but not cooked foods at that first Upper Porcupine aid station. So the question is, if lightning comes into the air, are you tracking who is taking the lightning alternate route? We track that information at Geyser. So I got exceptional volunteers at that aid station, and we have Starlinks at any aid station that does not have great service. So we'll be continually communicating between Hazardous and Geyser to keep one another updated on who's not able to take the official course and had to take the alternate lightning route. So is there any reason to carry poles before second pass through Porcupine? I would say no. The first section of the course, like I mentioned, 1.5 miles on paved road before you get on single track. And then all that single track all the way up to Hazardous just doesn't necessarily warrant poles. I would, if it was me, I would have my poles at Hazardous, or I'd reserve the use of my poles when my legs get tired towards the end of the race. That's how I would handle the use of poles. But I wouldn't recommend them before, the first pass through Porcupine. And I'd recommend that if you're going to put them anywhere, the best place would probably be Hazardous. Animal encounters. I mean, it's what you would expect in the Colorado and Utah mountains. Certainly, there's mountain lions and bears. Runners over the course of the last 5 or 6 years that we've organized this event, we've not had any bear or mountain lion encounters. That's not to say that they're not out there. That is like bear hunting season. I don't understand the hunting seasons all that well, but that's the season in which hunters are out with their dogs chasing animals up trees. So maybe that wards the wildlife off during that time of the year, but it's never been an issue. I don't think bears are a significant issue in the Colorado and Utah mountains. Certainly, I don't believe that it warrants bear spray. But you know, mountain lions are mountain lions. So anyway, um, can spectators bike alongside runners? I don't have any problem with that. Like I said, we're flexible about the pacing, and we organize this event for you all, not and we want you to enjoy this event, this experience. And if that includes having a spectator alongside you on a bike, don't have any problem with that. How much water should we be carrying? Again, this is just it all depends on how fast you're moving and how much water you typically consume. I'm 6'4". I consume more water than someone who's 5'1". I can consume about 32 ounces of water over the course of an hour. So for me, I would, during the 10-mile stretches of the course where there's not aid, I'd want probably close to, 3 32-ounce flasks, depending on how hot it is and all those other factors. So, I mean, 2 flasks, 20 ounces, it just depends on how much you drink and how quickly you're moving and the distance between those aid stations. I just got I got some new like 28-ounce flasks, which much better than the like 18 to 20-ounce flasks that you typically get. So please just be aware of the distances between the aid stations, and carry what you need to carry to get you through. And the worst thing you can do to yourself is cause yourself to dehydration. So carry whatever equipment you need to carry to keep up on your hydration. Let's see here. Not great with this technology, so thanks again for being here and being patient. No, so this, there's, we're not live tracking you along the course. We are manually tracking you. Like I mentioned, we have great ways to communicate between aid stations and myself at the start finish line. So I'm reading messages as I'm speaking. So no live tracking, manual tracking. And if you want to communicate with crew, like I mentioned, there is cell phone service throughout most of the route. You can keep them updated with the use of a cell phone. So Will asked, I don't see the parking limitation location for Geyser, another aid station parking. Yeah, the only limitations, Will, are parking at the aid station that you're going to be captaining at Geyser, as well as Hazardous. Parking limitations at the other aid stations are not limited. There's plenty of parking for crew and for spectators. Just Hazardous and Geyser are 2 locations you cannot park. So the question is, can you only swap pickup pacers at crew accessible aid stations? Again, we're really flexible about this. If your crew is out there and you need to swap a pacer for any reason outside of crew accessible aid stations, I don't really care. So yeah, you can swap a pacer wherever you like. Just make sure that they've signed the waiver. So if they know that they're going to pace you at some point, I would just highly recommend, before crew departs from the start finish line after runners begin, to just come and sign those waivers, and then they're covered throughout the event. Okay, let me just scroll through these questions, see if there's anything I left off. Again, if you have additional questions, send me a message. If you're like me, I'd much prefer to have a one-on-one conversation. I am happy to set up a time that we can chat for 30 minutes to an hour, whatever you need, going over any additional details that you may have. But again, I appreciate everyone being here. We're very, very excited about the 2026 Ute 100. And just kind of as a side note, this is the first year since 2018, its inception, that were running the exact same course. We took this race over in 2022 and worked hard to get, you know, the same course on this single loop course that we have for you. So let me just check here. No crew at both Hazardous and Geyser. You'll have to wait until they get through Geyser and down to Dark Canyon to crew them there. So runners do have to go a distance without crew. So keep that in mind. So the question is that there's small streams on Caltopo GPS. There's typically running this time of the year. Yeah, they typically are running. I haven't been in the mountains this summer. This is the first time I haven't visited early and checked course. A number of Moab locals happily did that for me. So yeah, there are a number of creek crossings where you could fill water with a filter. So, you know, after Hazardous, as you're ascending Mans, there's a couple of creeks. As you descend Mans, can't really think of a creek right off the top of my head. All along Dark Canyon, no creek crossings, but there is a creek crossing on your way up to South Mountain. No creek crossings along the South Mountain section. No creek crossings back to Geyser, to the water only aid station. So there is a couple of creek crossings, but they're not frequent. And as I mentioned earlier, you can avoid getting your feet wet. Yeah, so yeah, I looked at the weather in Moab. I was actually in Moab on Wednesday. I think it was 106 when I was there. Yeah, we can expect it to be 30 degrees cooler than Moab. So yeah, I think the hottest we've ever experienced is maybe lower 80s at the start finish location. But that is really the only section of the course that's hot, that you're going to experience too much heat. Once you get past Hazardous, those temperatures are going to cool. And you can see, if you look at the race website and a lot of those images, a number of runners are wearing warm weather or cold weather equipment, jackets and gloves and those kind of things. So we can expect everything from 40s overnight, 50s at the beginning, to 70s when you finish. 70s, maybe low 80s when you finish. So question is, could a pacer join at Hazardous for the final section? I can't even have crew going up there. The only way that anyone's allowed up that road is if they're camping at the Warner Lake campground. That's a question in regards to Hazardous. That pacer is just going to have to be willing to go from Geyser all the way to the finish. There's no option to pick up a pacer at Hazardous. And like I said, the National Forest will be there to monitor. And they're taking notes and they're drawing pictures. And we will get in trouble if we have crew at either Hazardous or Geyser. Okay. Okay. I think that is it. Okay. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Again, as I mentioned, if you have any questions, send me an email. I'm leaving tomorrow at about noon with my good friend Michael Hartley, and we'll be out marking course on Monday. So if you're in the mountains, you might catch us at the start finish line. But otherwise, I will see everyone Friday and Saturday morning. Thanks again for joining us, and safe travels.